Do you feel like Vogel got a fair shot with KD and the Suns?
No, but look, there's a few things that I'm going to say this morning that's going to be very, very unpopular. When I give a damn, I'll let you know, but it needs to be said, so I'm going to say it. Put Kendrick, Perkins, and Chiney up on the screen for me, please. Let me tell y'all something. Number one, Frank Vogel did not get a fair shake. Who the hell said he deserved one? He was not the first choice for the job. They wanted Ty Lue. Am I lying, ladies, gentlemen? They wanted Ty Lue. You understand? Okay? So you weren't the first choice. I'm not even sure if you were the second choice. So knowing that and coming into that situation, fresh off of getting fired from the Lakers job, you knew what the situation was. My boy Jeff, my man Jeff Brown, out here in L.A. Everybody know my brother Jeff. What does he say, Molly? Fair is a place where they judge pigs. It doesn't exist. It's what he says. It's what he says all the time, Big Perk.
People just say life ain't fair, you know.
That's what he says. Fair is a place where they judge pigs. It doesn't exist. Frank Vogel knew what the situation was. I respect the hell out of Frank Vogel. I'm sad for him. I don't want him unemployed. He doesn't deserve to be an unemployed coach. I get that. But the flip side is when they give you Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, here's what they didn't expect: to get swept in the first round, coming off a regular season in which you were the worst fourth quarter team in the entire NBA. I mean, they gave up double-digit leads like they were giving out Jolly Ranchers. I mean, it was ridiculous. You understand what I'm saying? This is what they were doing. And so when you're giving up leads throughout the regular season, and then it's accentuated and punctuated in the postseason because you can't win a game, you got to go. You got to go. Okay? That's what happened with Frank Vogel. Now let me get to Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant is one of the greatest players this game has ever seen. Here's what Kevin Durant and all those close to him are going to have to accept. The finger of blame is now going to come in his direction. Even though he all NBA, even though he averaged damn near 28 a game, even though we know when that buzzer time, tip-off time arrives, that brother going to ball on an elite level better than 98% of the league, if not more. He's that dude as a talent. What about a teammate? Got to start asking this question. Here's the reason why. Here's what we're saying. And I challenge anybody covering the NBA. I ain't talking about players that ain't gonna lie on his behalf. I'm talking about people cover the NBA. How many times do we keep hearing reports? He's never happy. He's always miserable. No matter where he goes, it's going to be a situation where he's not happy. He distances himself from other people. When he was in Golden State the last year, he ain't talked to nobody but Bob Myers. He ain't talked to nobody else. This is what they say. I'm not there. I can only tell you what they're saying. He ain't talking to nobody but Bob Myers. He goes to Phoenix. They were talking about he was barely talking to his teammates Booker and Beal and everybody else there. Now, he's not a bad person. Nobody's saying he did something wrong to other people, but he purportedly goes into a shell and distances himself from everyone else until it's time to play. Well, how are you going to lead? Guess what? You're not going to lead. And if you're not going to lead, that means you ain't a leader. And if you ain't a leader, well, who the hell was the leader on Phoenix? The answer's nobody, which is why the coach is fired, which is why they were home, which is why they were more visible at F1 in Miami than they were on the basketball court. That is a fact. Floor is y'all's.
Kevin Durant is a product of a generation in which if you were the great talent, a superstar, that type of dynamic player, the expectations is that you are a leader. And I'm not saying that he's not a leader, but what I am saying is that he's more so looked to be a compliment in his career. But we put that leadership label on him where we play with a lot of guys that just want to show up and hoop and that are super talented scoring the basketball. And I think when you are part of that generation and those expectations, that's why we always talk about these things like leadership and characteristics of KD. Whereas now we understand guys that just are built. They have teams. Look at Jason Tatum that we just talked about in the Boston Celtics. Brad Stevens was the executive of the year because he designed a team knowing that he needed to support Jason Tatum with as many top players as necessary, because maybe you're not going to get that put the entire team on your back from that same player. So I think KD is a little different than those of his generations, and I think we've misdiagnosed who he is as a player to this point. But when we talk about how coaching impacts, and Perk, you don't agree? Because I know you've always said that KD is not capable of leadership. I'm just saying I have played with countless people that are not as demonstrative of leaders.
But I'm not saying he can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying he can't lead. I'm not saying he can't lead, Janae. I'm saying he doesn't. There's a difference.
Well, in my point of view, I think this team is not necessarily designed in the way that he thought it was going to be, because he came to play with Devin Booker, and then they hemorrhaged the entire squad when you brought in Bradley Beal. If you look at the timeline of everything, at the end of the day, when it comes to Frank Vogel, I don't think he got a fair shake, because as someone who looks at the construction of this team, based off of it being so top-heavy, that is not what wins right now in the NBA. You talked about the fourth quarters. Even though you have three great offensive players, as you mentioned, those fourth quarters, they struggled. And then in the postseason, that big three was minus 51. There were problems. I don't know if this was the intention of the team construction being this way by KD, but I'm saying he went out there, he probably played the most amongst the big three, and he did do a lot of great things. Now, when you point the finger, the first person to go is typically the coach, and to me, that is unfair. I think the big issue, you said he distanced himself when it comes to leadership. I think instead he should have just doubled down instead of dipping. We see a path of dipping. That doesn't mean he's not a great player and that he's not capable to lead through his play. It just means his personality is much different.
Go ahead, Perk.
Well, Sinead, I understand your point when it comes down to franchise players being leaders, because all franchise players are not leaders.
Exactly.
But in this instance, it's different for Kevin Durant. You want to know why? Because he left Golden State and Steph Curry. We probably would have about 4 championships and another finals MVP. So when you leave and then you go to Brooklyn because you want your own setting and you want to team up with Kyrie Irving, and then that don't work out after bringing in James Harden and you having a big three there and having one of the biggest failures in NBA history, now you get traded to the Phoenix Suns where you're with Devin Booker. And let me remind you, CP3 was there. So if Kevin Durant didn't want to be uncomfortable and take a leap as far as his leadership role, then why didn't they do everything in their power to keep CP3? You know why? Because CP3 was going to hold Kevin Durant responsible on the professionalism side. That's why. And so all of a sudden you bring in Bradley Beal, and so now Kevin Durant, we're asking you to get uncomfortable. You're a 2-time NBA champion. You're a 2-time finals MVP. Like, it's okay to get uncomfortable. We're not asking you to go scream in guys' faces. We're asking you to do just enough to hold guys accountable to be an extension of Frank Vogel. But now, all of a sudden, when you don't respect Frank Vogel and you don't talk to him for the last 2.5, 3 months, then that sends a signal to the rest of the team that they don't have to respect Frank Vogel. And so this Frank Vogel firing was a business decision. It was either Kevin Durant or Frank Vogel, and we knew what the Phoenix Suns were going to do. Frank Vogel was out of there. I believe Frank Vogel, his resume speaks for itself. He's an NBA champion. He did some remarkable things when he was with Paul George and the Pacers, and he did not get a fast shot. He wasn't the one that had to close out on shooters. He wasn't the one that had to slide those puppies, and he definitely wasn't the one that was getting that work put on him and getting his noise talked to him while Anthony Edwards was busting they behind. Like, I mean, at some point, you got to have a level of accountability, and we're lacking that right now in the NBA.